Hi, everybody. All right, and welcome to the week 4 video lecture. How wild is that? We are in week 4 already. And if you're working through this at your own pace, it might be week 2, but welcome to week 4. And maybe you're a little slower and you're in week 6 and it's week 4. So whatever it is, this is the week 4 lecture. So my on-campus classes in week 4, this is exactly what we're doing. And so you're doing it too, but you're seeing me this way. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today is when we talk about tips and tricks and that everyone has the ability to be a writer. I love when students tell me I can't because then I feel challenged. Oh yeah, let me prove to you that you can, right? Stephen King says anyone can be a writer. You take a subject and you put it with a verb, sentence. Wow. Noun and a verb, sentence. And you just toss in some other words here and there and look at you, you're writing. It's amazing. But again, I remind you, if you have one of these, you're a writer. You're communicating. Look at that's my husband. So anyway, you're a writer if you're using one of these. All right, let's go ahead and share screen. And I'm going to get us, ooh, let me do something real quick before I do that. I want to put that on the first slide. There we go. Now come back to you. Now I'll do share screen. Yes, I don't want you getting ahead by seeing things that you shouldn't see just yet. So I'm clicking on slideshow, not slideshow, slideshow. I'll get this started here. There we go. Make my window just a little bit bigger. All right. Here we go. We're going to talk about things you must know. Must. Absolutely essential for you to know and understand about writing. All right, i.e., why you can be a writer. So we're going to begin with some writing tips from this guy. And this is Chuck Wendig. And everybody together say, who is Chuck Wendig? Well, he's a writer. And he is quite a phenomenal writer, actually. Here's a little bit about him. This I took from his blog. It says he's a novelist, a screenwriter, and a game designer, right? This is his blog. It's called Terrible Minds. That's where this article that I'm about to share with you comes from. He talks a lot about writing and food and the madness of toddlers. He uses lots of naughty language. Not safe for work, probably not safe for life, be advised. So some of you might be wondering, okay, so why should we care what he says? Well, he knows a thing or two about writing because he's in several different genres of writing and communication. So as a novelist, a screenwriter, a game designer, a video game designer, and a blogger. So he is a communicator. He uses words. And so we're going to read one of his blog posts. I thoroughly enjoy this blog post. It is called 25 of My Personal Rules for Writing and Telling Stories. And so we're going to jump into it. With each slide, keep in mind that a lot of this advice is specifically geared toward fiction writers. We're not writing fiction in this class. We actually are writing nonfiction, but we are reading fiction. And I think that every single piece of his advice has implication for us as writers / communicators out here in the big wide world of communications. And so we're going to dive in and take a look at the different parts of this article. I also want to tell you that, let me just tell you a little bit about Chuck's writing. So I'm going to say Chuck like I know him. So Chuck and I, so I got his book series, Mockingbird. I think it's Mockingbird is the name of the series. I could be wrong. Anyway, it's a series of 5 books, and the main character's name is Miriam Black. And Miriam has this ability. I'm searching for the right word because I know that she herself feels like she's cursed, but she has this ability. And if she touches your skin or she touches you, she immediately in her mind sees a flash of how you're going to die. And so she's not thrilled with this gift, if you will, but it is an ability that she has. And so she's an anti-hero because she doesn't necessarily want to help people because she discovers that she can alter the future. She can see how they're going to die and then help them avoid it so that they can go on to live longer. But she doesn't always want to. And then sometimes she finds herself unwillingly helping, or it's crazy. And she's one of those characters that you love to hate her, but then you hate to love her at the same time. And I'm in book 3 and I still don't know if I like her. But you just keep reading, and his books are fast paced. They are horrific. Like, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. The scenario that's laying out and the situations that are happening, like his writing is fast paced and you're right there with him, and it's graphic and it's intense and wonderfully enjoyable. So when Chuck's talking to me about here's how you make your fiction better, I know he knows what he's talking about because I've read his writing. So moving on, here we go. We're going to jump into the first. Oh, there it is. That's the 3 books that I have read. Blackbirds, I've read Mockingbird, and I am reading The Cormorant, and there are 2 books following The Cormorant. So yes, wonderful series. Moving on. Disclaimer: there are euphemisms sprinkled throughout the following screens just because Wendig does have a little bit of a dirty mouth, and me being me, I'm going to use euphemisms instead. So anywhere you see the word fish, you can know that the right word there is actually not fish, if you know what I mean. Okay. All right. And you might see stuff instead of the S word, and, just things like that. So moving on. Here's the beginning of this blog post. Okay. What follows are really just mottos or sayings or made up platitudes that I happen to live by. And for all I know, I'll only live by them for a couple of weeks until I realize they comprise a fetid heap of horse dew. Put a euphemism there, just some dots. But I thought I'd like to write them down just the same. Some of this is greatest hit stuff, no doubt. You've heard a good bit of this before. But a lot of it is also an evolution of my thoughts on writing and storytelling, and one's thoughts in this domain should ever be shifting and squirming and changing. This seems like a doubly good time to lay this foundation coming into the stretch before NaNoWriMo strikes like a typhoon. Okay, we stop you there. And some of you are going, NaNoWriMo? What is NaNoWriMo? I love NaNoWriMo. It stands for National Novel Writing Month. It is the month of November. And there are thousands of people across the world who have joined NaNoWriMo, and every November we commit to writing 50,000 words in 30 days. So you're writing a novella in 30 days, or at least seeing how far into your novel you can get in 30 days. It works out to be 1,667 words a day, which really isn't that bad. And I have challenged my novel writing students to do it, and so far none of them have succeeded. I have personally completed it 3 times. I've attempted it 5 and completed 3. So it can be a little bit of a daunting task, but if you have a lot going on, like last year, I had every intention of doing it, and then my mama got really, really sick and passed away. So in November, so I did not get NaNoWriMo done, and that's okay. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. But that's what he's talking about here. He's getting this information out there right before NaNoWriMo strikes like a typhoon, he said. And for many people, that's exactly kind of what it is. It just kind of comes in and blows your life over, and you're completely absorbed and wrapped up in the story that you're telling. And the idea for 50,000 words in 30 days is to teach you to write without thinking. And remember, I talked about that in the previous video with your free writing, that you want to write without overthinking. You want to write without thinking. You want to just put down what you already know. And so here the same applies in writing. So in writing a rough draft and writing fiction, just write like a typhoon. Just write like you're a tornado flying through the page and just get it all out. So that's what he's referring to here is NaNoWriMo. It's fantastic. Love it. Be happy to talk with any of you outside of class about NaNoWriMo. I am going to try to do it again. Every year I'm going to try to do it, just to kind of depends on what's going on in my life at the time. But I have a project that I'm working on and I need it to be at least 50,000 more words. And so that's my time period, because then I can join the website. Well, I have already joined the website, but I could get my project listed, and then you are uploading your word count every day, but you're checking yourself against thousands of other people. And it's pretty cool. I find it to be exciting. And at the end of it, you get a certificate of completion. I put it on my LinkedIn page, right? I say, why not? It is an accomplishment. So back to the article. Warning, long post ahead. Put on your swimmy caps and arm floaters. Let's dive into deep waters. So the first one here is, don't write what you know what you write. Saying write what you know limits us from the outset. We only know a limited number of things after all. I know the smell of honeysuckle on a summer's day. I know what it's like to have a toddler, to be a terrible bowler, to slurp up gin from my rat's nest of a beard so as not to waste its herbal booziness. We should certainly write to our experiences, but we cannot limit ourselves only to that. We should be encouraged then to have new experiences, to know and learn new things. Write with authority and authenticity. Marry experience with imagination on the story's page. Isn't that beautiful? So how does that relate to us with nonfiction? Learn new things. Be willing to learn new things. You don't know everything. And if you think that you do know everything, you need to realize you don't know everything. We always have more to learn. And we need to be open to that, open to this idea that there's always more to learn, more to discover, different sides to see. And then we need to be willing to do that so that we can add those new things to what we already know. Research. Research is a wonderful thing. That's a way to put this in a nutshell. Don't be afraid of research. Bleed on the page. Now, this is the way Chuck says free write or word vomit, except he says bleed on the page. It's a very similar concept. Let's hear how he explains it. He says, don't write purely to escape pain and fear. Mine it. Extract those wretched little nuggets of heart-black hate coal and use them to fuel the writing of a scene, a chapter, maybe the whole gosh darn book. Cut yourself open. Color the words with your heart's blood. I'm an advocate of finding the things that you fear and opening old wounds to let them splash onto the characters and inform the tale at hand. We'll know. We'll feel it too. This is where your experience matters. It's not necessarily in the nitty-gritty of mechanical experience, but rather in the authenticity of your emotional life. And this is true for the opposite as well. Write about the things that thrill you, that stir hope, that deliver unto you paroxysms of tingly exultation. Be true to yourself, and we'll all grope your lingo, Daddy-o. Crowd goes wild. I love that he says here, it's in the authenticity of your emotional life. We need to write from deep inside. You will have more access to words when you are authentic. When you dig into your emotions and you are real, bleed on the page. So how does this work? We word vomit, we bleed on the page, we free write, we let the words out. Be honest, be truthful, be real about emotions and what you feel, about your opinions and your ideas. Let them out. Be true to who you are. good stuff. Stop telling yourself you can't write those things, because you can. You can. Oh, I'll never forget the first time I sat down in one of my classes. It was a creative fiction class. And we had an assignment. We were supposed to write something outside of our normal box. And so I tried writing a sex scene. It was good. But we got to class and we had to read our selections out loud that we had written. And I was good with the fact that most everyone in the class was my age-ish. Why was there an 83-year-old grandpa in the class? Oh, oh, that was funny. It's fine. I survived. Anyway, write the song that sings to your heart. Brands are for corn chips and car commercials. Trends are for great pop music and nightclubs. But you, write the book you want to write. It's not like being a writer is a fast track to a dumpster full of cash. So why waste time writing stories that don't speak to you in some way? I have to show you guys. I'm going to pull this up on Instagram. I follow Rilla Askew on Instagram. She is a creative writing professor at OU. So if any of you are going to go to OU and you decide to take some creative writing courses, you might end up with Rilla Askew as your professor. Let me see if I can find what it was she posted the other day. Yes, here it is. So she's an author. It says author of Prize for the Fire, Most American, Notes from a Wounded Place, Fire in Beulah, Kind of Kin, The Mercy Seat. She writes a lot of Native history from here in Oklahoma specifically, and she's had her books sold internationally. She is an incredible woman. I had the privilege of interviewing her. That interview is on YouTube, so you can type in my name and her name, and you'll find the interview. Her name is Rilla, R-I-L-L-A, Askew, A-S-K-E-W. But she posted this, and see, this relates to what I just read there. On NPR, they reported the median income for a full-time writer last year was $23,000. And writers' incomes declined by 42% between 2009 and 2019. Wow. And what the article here is about is the damage that AI is going to continue to do to authors and their potential to make income. So when Chuck says it's not like being a writer is a fast track to a dumpster full of cash, that kind of makes me giggle, because it's not. Even pre-AI, it's not. So we do it because we love it. We do it because we want to communicate. We do it because we need to communicate. So then he goes on to say, besides, the books that rent you free from your own heart and mind will be far greater and far more meaningful than anything delivered to you from the expectations of others. Find the story in you and find yourself in the story. So how does this relate to nonfiction? With any topic that you are given in your college career or in your work life that you have to write about, find a way to care about it. Find a way to care about it. And that's on you. That is your responsibility to find a way to care about your topic. That's not somebody else's job. That's yours. And so Chuck is laying down that challenge for you, as am I. The next one here is show now, tell later. Show, don't tell is another one of those false dichotomy nuggets of advice. Anytime a piece of forbidding advice exists, you can nearly always produce a corollary example where X, Y, and Z stories utterly violate that precept with great heaping helpings of success. It seems to be fairly well regarded that a lot of the time it's best to default to show, but sometimes, hey, tell is good too. Only problem is when. Here's a good guideline. Never tell in the beginning. Always show first. You don't want to begin the story with an expositional lecture. You read the cereal box as you eat the cereal, not before. You got to get that first spoonful of honey boo-boo bombs on your tongue before you're ready to settle in and read an ingredient list. Yeah? Order of operations is key. Dessert first, veggies later. Show now, put off telling as long as you can. Make your writing interesting. Reel your reader in. Have a strong introduction. Tell a story in your introduction. Share some shocking statistics in your introduction. Do something unexpected in your introduction. Reel the reader in. Dessert first, guys. Dessert first. And we do that in nonfiction as much as we do that in fiction. So you've got to make them interested, or your reader is going to be like, throw it out. Don't care about that article. Don't want to read it because you didn't grab their attention. So that's what we're talking about here. We want to show them. We want to give them a story, make it alive, make it emotional in some way. Share some data that's just like mind-blowing. All right. Aim big, write small. Writers need goals. And I don't mean one goal. I mean a nearly endless and evolving series of goals. You don't just say, I'm going to write a novel. Because, duh, that's bare minimum stuff. You want to have a career planned out. This isn't a short game. It's a long con. Look as far down the line as you can to retirement, to cremation, to the time when nanobots resurrect you to write one more best-selling holo vid. That way, you can always course correct to try to move yourself further toward those goals. But, whereas your career is a long con, each story really is the short game. You want to keep your head in that story. You want to treat it like it's everything, like everything hangs on this one project, in part because it may. To put it differently, have the larger path plotted out, but focus on each step upon the path as if it's your last. So that's awesome stuff, right? That's awesome stuff. So we want to aim big, but write small. Have goals, but focus on the project at hand. Doesn't that apply to college? Absolutely it does. Aim big. You're going to graduate. You're going to get the job that you want. Write small. Every single project along the way is just as important as the next. Plot out your path, one thing at a time. Always keep your goal in mind. I love that. It's great advice. Thank you, Chuck. Welcome, he says. Audience is the monkey on the character's back. See, here's the deal. We're all humans. Well, except you over there, you robot. No, don't talk to me. I shall not abide your bleeps and blorps and murderous mental intent. Humans tell stories, and when we do, we tell them about other humans. And here you say, wait, that's not right. We tell stories about unicorns and intelligent spaceships and mole men. And yes, technically true, but those are always stand-ins for people. We view all characters through the lens of our own humanity. It's the same reason trees only read magazines about trees, printed on the flesh of humans. The circle of life. Character is how the audience gets through your story. Character is the vehicle. So how does this apply to nonfiction? We want to always keep our audience in mind. We want to make our writing human, right? Whatever it is that you're talking about, make it human. Make it relational to human experience. Make it relational to your audience's experience. Keep your audience in mind while you write, while you research, while you outline, while you do all of these steps of the writing process. Keep your audience in mind and make your writing human. Plot is Soylent Green. This is really only funny for people who know what Soylent Green is. Maybe the word isn't funny. Maybe the word is horrifying. Now all of you should run right out and look up Soylent Green and see what it is. Soylent Green actually comes from a movie, and it is a food product made to feed to humans that is made of humans. Cannibalizing your society, giving Soylent Green as food. I mean, why not, right? So anyway, it's kind of horrible. But he's saying, Plot is Soylent Green. Plot is made of humans. I said it before, but let me codify for you now. Plot is not externally driven. I mean, it can be fine, yes, but you can create a laundry list of external events that occur where characters are dropped into the proceedings, like a pukey 4-year-old forced to ride a roller coaster. But that's not the strongest nor the most organic way to approach plot. Plot is Soylent Green. Plot is made of people. Characters create, drive, and modify plot. They're not strapped into the ride. They're building the fishing roller coaster as it barrels forward. They change the story with every bad decision, every punch thrown, every intense desire or madcap fear. Too many storytellers force events. They shove the plot around like a schoolyard bully. Let the characters handle it. Let it be on them. The simplest plot is your characters do things and other characters respond. As a fiction writer, I get this completely. Like, you focus on character. That's one of the reasons why I love Stephen King. He is a character-focused, character-driven writer. Focus on character, build your characters, and then toss a situation at them and let them respond to it. If you've built them well enough, if you've made them human, no matter the circumstance that comes at them, they'll respond to it. If you've built them, they'll respond. So, but in thinking about nonfiction, the type of writing that we're doing, so plot is Soylent Green. What does that mean? Well, stories are made of people. Whether we're writing true or made up, we need to focus on the human. So in your nonfiction, in your essays, in your research papers, tell stories. Use examples. Be like a preacher or a politician. Tell stories. Tell jokes. Tell anecdotes. Make your ideas human. Make them Soylent Green. People will read what you write if it gets them in here. Make it human. Conflict is the food that feeds the reader. Characters exist in a flat line until we challenge them, and sometimes they challenge themselves. Sometimes they're challenged by other people, by nature, by robots, or by fungal infections in and around one's nether country. But stories need conflict across the physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual spectra. Accidents, betrayals, cataclysm, desperation, excess. These are the letters in the alphabet of conflict. Conflict is essential. It's why we read books. It's not fiction books. It's why we watch movies. It's why we get wrapped up in TV shows. It's why we're driving down the highway and there's an accident and we got to stop and look at it. Because we like conflict. So do your readers. So what you write must be debatable. It must be opinionated. It has to have conflict in order for a reader to care. In order for it to stir conversation, in order for it to take on a life of its own, your writing must have conflict in it. Which means with nonfiction, we include opposing perspectives, and we talk about how those perspectives conflict with one another. Conflict, right? So here's what I think, but here's what Joe Blow down the street thinks, right? Now, I believe this because X, Y, and Z, although I know Joe thinks that because of PDQ. However, X, Y, and Z seems to be more true because, and then you lay it out. You put that conflict in there. It's good stuff. Now, fish trust. Remember I said fish doesn't mean fish? Actually, I should do it this way. Oh, I think I'm funny. We think we want trustworthy storytellers. Trust is a positive trait, and why would we want anything different in a storyteller? The audience thinks it knows what it wants. Happy endings, triumphant protagonists, defeated villains, a book that dispenses chicken McNuggets at the end of every chapter as a reward. But getting what we want, what we expect, is Snooze-tacular. Trust in a storyteller is overrated. Safety is meaningless. The storyteller has to do what the storyteller has to do, which is hurt the character, and by proxy, the audience. The storyteller is like an evil dungeon master or a tricksy dominatrix. What the audience really wants is to acquiesce to the tale told. They want to be surprised by a particularly inventive dungeon trap or shocked when someone closes alligator clamps on your wriggly bits. We want to trust our storytellers only so far as to say, I trust that I cannot trust you. That's awesome. Fish trust, right? Be shocking with your writing. Be willing to say things no one else will say. Be willing to share that opinion, no matter how wacky it is. Think outside the box. Be willing to be different. When you are sharing your thoughts and opinions, be willing to be strong as long as you can back them up. If you can back them up, go for it. All right. Now, the dual function of story. Good story serves two functions. One, it makes coffee. And two, it shoots lasers. Wait. That can't be right. Checks notes. Oh, see. Sorry, wrong page. Those are two things I want my cybernetic arm to do. Whatevs. Story. Yes, story. Good story does two things. One, it makes us feel. And two, it makes us think. It engages us emotionally and intellectually. Some authors misunderstand the story's purpose and spend too long mired in action and entertainment and forget that we actually have to care about the characters, care about the topic, about the outcome, that it's essential that we come out of the book having both a visceral reaction and a reaction that makes us want to sit down with friends over pie and whiskey to talk about what we just read. Making someone think and feel is not entertaining in the strictest sense, but it's why stories matter. We want to make our reader think and feel. That is the dual function of writing, not just stories, but writing. And it's why we include stories into our nonfiction, because it causes your reader to think and feel. Let's be thinking about that. We want our readers, I'm sorry, I keep itching my nose, like something in here is getting to me and I don't know what it is. And I'm all turning red. Oh, whatever. I have Kleenex in here. Either I may have to pause and go get one in a minute. Make the reader feel and think. And embrace the holy shnikes moment. That didn't say shnikes before. I want to punch you in the stomach with my words. Relax, put down the restraining order already. When you read my work, the ideal thing for me is to provide you with at least one moment where you gasp, where your eyes go wide and your jaw hangs loose like a broken porch swing, where you let out 3, maybe 4 drops of pee because the story caused you to lose your bearing for just that moment. It's key as a storyteller to try to orchestrate those moments where you violate expectation and drop a bunker buster on the characters. Be careful, though. The trick to the holy stuff moment is that it needs to feel organic, so that after the smoke is cleared and the trauma is worn thin, the events that transpired seem in retrospect like the only way it could have happened. It's awesome. So how does this apply, right? We want to go for the gut punch in our writing. If you've got an opinion, say it. Put it in there. Go for it. Include that conflict. Holy shnikes! Do it. Make your writing interesting. Here's how description works. A persistent question in terms of writing is, what and how much do I describe? Lovecraft describes every lamp and carpet fiber with intimate, bewildering detail, which he can get away with and you most likely cannot. Here's how you know what to describe. Ready? Is your mind quivering like the dumpy haunches of an overweight pony? Describe those things that break the status quo, that defy expectation. We know what a chair looks like, so you don't need to describe it, unless it's got a broken leg, or is of some unusual art period, or has blood on it, or is made of mouse bones and rat whiskers. It sings show tunes. The things that need description are the things that, to risk redundancy, the audience needs described. If they can't escape this chapter without knowing how that thing smells, then you better talk that stench up post-haste. So if you need the audience to see it, feel it, touch it, taste it, experience it with you, it needs description. Describe what needs description. What does your audience need to see, touch, feel, taste, and smell? 5 senses. What do they need from you so that they can be right there with you? Describe it. Did you love that description of the chair? I love it. I love reading it out loud. I just do. Here, let's take that off. Let's go back. Here we go. That's it. We know what a chair looks like, so you don't need to describe it, unless it's got a broken leg, or is of some unusual art period, or has blood on it, or it's made of mouse bones and rat whiskers. Sing show tunes. That's so great. Thanks, Chuck. I love that. Is it a cool chair? Well, if you need your audience to know it's a cool chair, you better tell them about it. Well, how much do I tell? How much do I tell? Chuck, how much do we tell? Well, he says the rule of threes. When in doubt, the rule of threes is a rule that plays well with all of storytelling. When describing a thing, no more than 3 details. A character's arc, 3 beats. A story, 3 acts. An act, 3 sequences. An outline, 3 points. Subpoints, 3. 3 is the right number. 3 is magic number. Yes, Schoolhouse Rock. Thank you. Yeah, it says 3 is the magic number. A plot culminating in a mystery of a twist. At least 3 mentions throughout the tale. This is an old rule and a good one. It's not universal, but it's a good place to start. 3. Don't under-describe and don't over-describe. Stick with 3. 3 bits of description. It's 3. Just do it. It's 3. Every story is an argument. Every story is you saying something. That's theme. Maybe it's the theme that the audience discovers. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just the same. Every story is you making a case for something. It's a thesis you're trying to prove. You're trying to say that love is everything, or love is hopeless, or that nature will defeat man, or man will defeat himself, or bees will defeat bears, or robots are fishing awesome. I don't know, man. I'm not you. Have a point of view. Have a perspective. Let your fiction state a case and argue that stuff till it's blue in the face. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about saying something. And the same should be true with our nonfiction. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about sharing your ideas. Boom. So stop trying to win. It's not about winning. It's about getting your ideas across. Every story is an argument. Everything that you write is an argument. You might write something on Facebook. It's an argument. You get up in the morning, you have an argument with yourself about what you're going to wear. Your outfit that day is an argument. Trying to decide where to go eat dinner is an argument. And so you guys are thinking argument's a fight. No, 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 no. We don't define the word argument correctly in our world. The correct definition of argument is a debate, a conversation of differing opinions, back and forth, without emotion, is logic-based. That is the correct definition of argument. So argument is everywhere. Embrace it. Be willing to write about it. Stories are like oxygen. Stories are like people. I've had a long day. Stories are like people. They need oxygen. All aspects of a story need time to breathe. Your story isn't one of those amusement park rides that shoots you up 100 feet straight up into the air. A story isn't a race to the end. Plus, that kind of thing will surely cause you to void your bowels upon whatever meth-scarred carny is operating that so-called amusement ride. A ride that hasn't been serviced since 1972 and still has the blood of the teenage girl who died on it greasing all of its diabolical gears. Let the tale have peaks and valleys, peaks of action and tension and violence, then valleys of reflection, emotion, fear, and desire. The oxygen is thin at the peaks and thick in the valleys. The peaks get taller as the story goes, and the valleys go deeper. To go back to the show versus tell thing, it's better to show at the peaks and tell only in the valleys. So how the heck does this apply to nonfiction? We need white space in our writing. We need pauses. We need to give the reader space to breathe. Tell your point and then come down. Tell your point and then come down. Tell your point, hit them. Yes. Good stuff. Care less. Not careless. Care less. This is a recent revelation for me, but one I'm keeping close for the near future. Sure, it seems an odd thing to suggest that we should care less than we already do. It seems dismissive, disrespectful even. But authors care too much in my experience. Writers of every genre, which includes you, students, you care too much. We care well beyond the gates of rationality. We let the perfect sit in its impossible to reach treehouse, pelting us with sticks and stones and pieces of old G.I. Joe figures, when really we should be happy, aiming firmly for the good. Caring less frees you. It frees you to write a bad draft and fix it later. It frees you from feeling stung by not every 5-star review. It frees you from the fear of the editor slashing pen, the teacher slashing pen. It frees you from the paralysis of rejection. Care less. Note the lesson here is don't care, isn't don't care. You should care, but you should also calm the fish down a little, is all I'm saying. You come into English class saying, I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't. I don't like it, I can't. Somebody made you feel bad along the way. Maybe it was you yourself, or maybe it was a teacher or a classmate. Someone made you feel bad somewhere along the way. You got to let go of that. Let go. Let it go. What does it matter what they think? What do you think? We need to care less, and we need to learn to put our thoughts and our opinions on paper regardless. Let it out. Bleed on the page. Keep the audience in mind as you write. Got to be there. Peaks and valleys, all these things. Care less. And I love that he says it frees you to write a bad draft. Your rough draft is called a rough draft for a reason, because it's supposed to be rough, meaning bad. Even Stephen King has rough drafts. Everyone has a rough draft. So if you sit down and you write a paper and you don't edit it, but that's the paper you're going to turn in, you stand around going, oh, woe is me. I'm such a bad writer. You're a bad writer if you turn that one in. Don't turn in your rough draft. Not as a final draft. Your rough draft is supposed to be bad because that's not where all the work is. The work is in the editing, you guys. That's where the work is. And we're going to talk about that in week 6. I'm going to give you a lot of tools and ideas for editing. Everybody thinks the writing is the hard part. No, it's not. That's just Bleh. Put your words on paper. Get them out. Bleed on the page. Cut yourself open. Let it out. Stop caring so much. Learn to edit your work, because editing is where the magic happens. And if you're a procrastinator and you don't give yourself time to edit, your work's going to be mediocre. It's not going to be good. You're not helping yourself. So we want to understand that a rough draft, everyone has them. You should have one. It's bad. It's bad. I have rough drafts. Stephen King has rough drafts. Everyone has rough drafts. You have rough drafts. Don't turn that in. Edit. But we have to care less. We have to stop being so mean to ourselves. Stop trying to be perfect right out of the gate. Go for your best. Get that rough draft written. Spend some time with it. Get it edited. Get it to its best. As best as you can do. And then feel good about it. Feel good about what you've done. Realize your reach. You can only control so much. You can't control professors or agents or publishers or the audience unless you're some kind of Pied Piper Svengali, which actually explains how some tremendously poopy books get such rabid fan throttling. You can control your story. You control characters, plot, the words on the page, the rhythm, the pacing. You do control the quality of the work. So control that. Write the best book that you could possibly write. Everything else is a leaf on the river. You can maybe puff out your cheeks and blow it. Hey, blow it. This way or that, but so much is left to the vagaries of fate. Control what you can. Abide the rest. Control what you can. Organize yourself. Organize yourself. Realize you can't be perfect. Do what you can. Pardon the fish up, Care Bear. This will probably show up on a final. Just saying. Just kind of my favorite thing in the world. Pardon the fish up, Care Bear. The writer's back is studded with arrows, blow darts, quills, one-star reviews, red pens, rejection letters rolled up into tight little tubes and shellacked with editor's spit so as to form the equivalent of prison shivs. It's hard out there for a wandering pen monkey. We don't have the equivalent of a hobo code with chalk marks on the sidewalk indicating dangerous vanity press lives here, or deluded self-publisher blog high on his own ego incoming, or that away lurks a mean old editor face. So cultivate calluses. Secrete enzymes to build your own authorial exoskeleton. Learn to take a punch. No glass jaws and writing pound. Harden the fish up. Meaning, get good with critique. We need peer review. It is essential to our ability to communicate. We put our words on the paper, we edit them up a little bit, we give them to our peers to review. And we listen to what they have to say. It doesn't mean we take everything that they say and fix everything that they've said. We sift it and we use wisdom, keeping the audience in mind. What is it that I need to alter and change? But we have to learn to take a punch. Learn to accept critique. Learn that critique is good for you. It's very good for you. Completo el pupo. Finishing a story will separate you from most of other writers out there in authorland. Finish your workspace case. Here, let me put it to you this way. Finishing the worst piece of stuffed story you've ever written will feel 1,000 times better than not finishing the most brilliant tale you've ever spun. Achieve narrative euphoria. Well, finish what you start, right? If you start it, finish it. Give it the time that it deserves. Read your work out loud. I feel like I've said that too, and maybe I haven't said it just yet in this class, but I will say it. You should always read your work out loud, doesn't matter what it is, before you click post, update, upload, submit, any of those things online. Read your work out loud. Your ears will hear things that your eyes will never see. It's fact. As Chuck says, don't give me that look. Read your work out loud. Don't argue. Don't fight. It will help. Promise. Promise. I guarantee it. If you find it didn't help you, let me know. I will let you taser me in the face. And by me, I mean some other guy who'll be my stand-in. Probably some real estate agent or toll booth attendant. I said it. A best-selling novelist said it. Every Comp 1 book says it. Read your work out loud. Ears will hear what eyes don't see. Do yourself a favor. And keep in mind, haters gonna hate. Fish them. They're part of the ecosystem. Drink the hate like it's Kahlua and cream. Inspiring love and hate is better than inspiring a middle-of-the-road, mushy, moderate shrug. I'd rather have, your story made me wing the mailman just for delivering it to me, than a quivering, Fish them. Haters gonna hate. You can't please everybody. Embrace it. Get good with it. Your paper isn't going to make everybody happy. And that's okay. It's okay. Embrace it. Love that. Write like the end is nigh. Best advice I can give right now is write like you have no time left. Write like you've got a slow-mo bullet tumbling towards your head and you can't get out of the way. Write like the end of times are here, like the Mayans were right, and in a few short months we're all going to die in a tidal wave, earthquake, pyroclastic, stuff-fit bird attack. Think about that. Let's say you had 2 years left on your clock. What book would you write? What story inside of you struggles to get to the front of the line, screaming and yelping and waving its arms like a drowning man? Write that story. Get that job. Do that thing. Take on that hobby. It doesn't have to be the only thing you write. You can take paycheck jobs, but make time for that kind of writing. Make time for your hobbies. Writing isn't just about giving the audience something. It isn't just entertainment. It's about giving to yourself too, because bad news. Maybe you have 2 years left. Maybe you have 20 or 40 or 60, but we're all going to end up under the Grim Reaper's writing mower. So get busy writing what you want to write, or get busy sucking exhaust. Do your best work today. Write like the end is nigh. Write like this project in front of you is the most important one, and give it your best. It's great advice. Wonderful advice. So thank you to Chuck Wendig for all of those fantastic pointers. I love this. I love this article. I use it in my creative writing courses as well. I find it very encouraging and inspirational, and it's a good reminder for me every time I go through it of things that I need to remember and recall as a writer. So now we've got a little video here of Stephen King. So some writing tips from Stephen King.
Number 1, show, don't tell. For example, in the book I'm working on now, there's a spooky monster, and instead of describing it, I drew it. Number 2, I cannot emphasize the importance of rewriting. I've been working on it for a few weeks, still working on the opening for my next book. Number 3, to develop as a writer, you must be reading books constantly. Here are a few suggestions: The Shining, Carrie, Salem's Lot, Pet Sematary, Dolores Claiborne, The Green Mile, Under the Dome. You get the idea.
Oh, thank you, Stephen King. You know, that was kind of a joke, right? All right. Now, Speaking of Stephen King, let's take a look at some information that I found in the book on writing. So again, like I showed you, I think it was last week. Here's the book, Stephen King on Writing. It's a wonderful book, textbook that he wrote. So, some vocabulary do's and don'ts, according to Stephen King. Do not make a conscious effort to improve your vocabulary. Right? Do not attempt to dress up your vocabulary. Do use a simple word in place of a complex, obscure word. Do use the first word that comes to mind. Why? Because vocabulary is your most common tool. You should be comfortable using it. Your vocabulary is what it is and will evolve how? As you read. If the first word that comes to your mind works in the sentence, then there's no reason to replace it with a fancier word that might have a slightly different connotation. Always say exactly what you mean, and if that includes writing a short, sweet word, then so be it. That takes me back to The Man Who Loved Flowers. And if you haven't read it yet, on the back page of the story, the last page of the story, close to the end, Stephen King does something in the middle of the last big paragraph that just blew my mind when I first read it. See, see if I can find it here. I've got it. If you haven't read the story yet, plug your ears. My eyeball. It's not the last. Let's see. All right. So it's a little bit higher up than the last big paragraph. It's just like the one before that big one. Some unknown time later, he slipped the hammer back into his inner coat pocket and backed away from the dark shadow sprawled on the cobblestones, away from the litter of tea roses by the garbage cans. He turned and left the narrow lane. It was full dark now. The stickball players had gone in. If there were blood stains on his suit, they wouldn't show. Not in the dark. Not in the soft, late spring dark. And her name had not been Norma, but he knew what his name was. It was love. There is a word in that sentence, in that paragraph, right in the middle of it. There's a 5-word sentence that blew my mind. The simple use of vocabulary here. We try to sound so smart when we're writing things. We try to use big words when we're putting things together because we want our professors to be impressed. And Stephen King is saying, don't do that. Write like you. Use your language. The only way to actually improve your vocabulary is to read and to be intentional about the things that you read. So maybe you're not into reading books, but read some articles, read some blogs, listen to podcasts. That increases vocabulary. But be listening to things that are not, yo, man, like, dude, listen to something a little bit higher quality as far as education goes. Something where you're going to hear correct word usage, not necessarily large vocabulary, but read and listen to things that are going to be good for you. So things that you can enjoy as well. It doesn't have to be boring to read a story or listen to a story. You could do books on audiobooks. Do audiobooks, man. I listened to 1984 by George Orwell on audiobook. Oh, scary as fish. Holy cow. Fake homework. Everyone should read George Orwell's 1984, especially right now in the world that we live in. Maybe listen to it on audiobook. That's what I did while cooking dinner over a period of a few days. Holy cow. Anyway, back to Stephen King. So right here in the middle of this, he turned and left the narrow lane. Then it says, it was full dark now. if you've read the entire story and you get to that spot, there is just this unsettling knowledge that comes with those words. It was full dark now. It doesn't just mean it's dark outside. It means it's evil. Full dark. Now, we use the word full every day. We say, I'm so full after we ate too much food, right? My gas tank is full when you fill up your car. We use that word all the time. And so Stephen King's just using regular vocabulary. But in the way he used it, it takes on significance that gives me chills when I read it. When I've read the whole story and I get to this point, it was full dark now. Drop the mic. Vocabulary. Don't try to sound fancier than you are. But if you want to increase your vocabulary, be intentional about what you're picking up to read. And you are reading because you have a cell phone. You are. I read on Instagram. I come across things on Instagram and I'm like, ooh, I want to know about that. And so I'll click on the link in bio and I'll read an article. I mean, you're doing it too. You are. Just be a little bit more intentional about the things that you read. So then Stephen King goes on to say, how do you get the tools? In this book, he talks a lot about the toolbox, the writer's toolbox, and how do we get the tools for our toolbox? He says, do read as much as possible. Do set a daily goal for writing. Do write in a basement place. And this is where he's talking about that muse that Brian Johnson talked about. So in a basement place, you want to make sure that you're getting yourself in your zone. You want to make sure that you have your inspiration set, that you've got the music that you need, that you're doing the groundwork so that the words can come. Do write what you know. Word vomit, get it all out, write down everything that you know. Trust your intuition. Go with your gut, with your opinions and your words. Don't get discouraged. And I think that a lot of us struggle there as we get discouraged. To stop getting discouraged. Keep moving forward. It's all about learning. It's all about growth. That's a growth mindset. Keep going. Everything that happens along the way, just look at it all as a learning opportunity and just keep going. Do always be honest with your writing and with yourself. And don't be abstract. We want to be clear. Be clear. So don't be abstract. We want to be clear. And so I'm including this example of the difference between abstract. Whoa, come back here. Where did I go? The difference between abstract and clear or concrete. So abstract writing is writing that lacks specific details and is filled with vague, indefinite words and broad generalized statements. It equals bored readers. So here's a sentence that is vague or abstract. Mrs. Cunningham is a tough grader. Concrete writing is characterized by specific details and specific language, and it equals engaged readers. Mrs. Cunningham flunked 75% of her class and gave no higher than a C to the students who did pass. Which one of those makes your eyebrows go, oh, right? It's the concrete one. It's the one with specific details. Now, it's not a true sentence. Your writing to be interesting must be concrete. How? That seems hard. Cool. Hold on. Some more information from Stephen King regarding description. Description draws the reader into the story through the senses. It begins with visualization of the subject of the description. Sometimes that means you're going to have to literally just sit there and think about it. Picture the thing that you're writing about. What do I need to describe so that the reader will see this correctly? Boom. Describe it. 3 bits. Don't over-describe. Don't under-describe. 3 bits. Do find the medium between too little and too much. Do include all of the senses. And then you say, but wait, there's 5 senses and you're saying 3 bits. I'll pick and choose the ones that work. But use 3. So maybe it's smell, and touch. Maybe it's sight, sound, and touch. Maybe it's touch, and smell. Whatever it is, whatever helps you get that description across is what you need to do. Don't spend too much time describing characters. I have in my book, For Love of Words, there's a character named Henry. And in my mind, Henry is Jeremy Irons. Hold on, you might not know who Jeremy Irons is. You might know the name Max Irons. Max Irons is his son. But, you know, I'm older, so it's the father that I find to be much more interesting. That's what we're going to go with. So let me find a picture that I want to show you guys. This is Jeremy Irons. Okay, and he's always got a scarf, and he's always in a dinner jacket, and he's just a very classy man. And he has played a lot of different roles that I've enjoyed over the years. I mean, he's just classy. Just, well-dressed man. Thank you, ZZ Top. So here he is a little younger. So this is more like my character, Henry. So one day, when I was living with my parents, this was just about 4 years ago, I'm watching Law and Order SVU because I nerdy love to watch Law and Order SVU. I'm watching it and I'm in my room and I start yelling, Mom! And so my mom comes tottering in there with her oxygen on. She's like, what? What is it? And I said, look, Henry's on TV. And she looks at that screen and she looks at me. She knew exactly who I was talking about. And she goes, that's not Henry. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly Henry. That's exactly who he is. And she's like, that is not what Henry looks like. And it was funny. I realized I couldn't argue with her because what I understood that to mean was that I had done a good job describing Henry in that book because my mother had her own interpretation of what he looked like based off of the loose details I had given for that character. She knew that he wore dinner jackets. She knew that he had graying hair, that he had defined cheekbones. Not a whole lot more. I didn't give an over amount of description. But it was really a funny conversation because I was like, Mom, Henry's on TV. She said, that's not Henry. And my mama was this little bitty, teeny bitty thing. And, you know, she didn't always share her opinion on things, but she was going to fight me on that. And it was funny. But I took that to mean that I had done a really good job of building that character. So in the book, it goes on to say, thin description leaves the reader feeling bewildered and nearsighted, while over description buries him or her in details and images. It is necessary to find the amount of description that is just right. Often this can be included in a few brief paragraphs without many heavy adjectives. It's also best to use all 5 of the senses in the description where possible. For instance, when describing a setting, include sound, sight, smells, and possibly touch if applicable. When describing characters, you could focus on a few well-chosen details that will stand for everything else. It's better to leave a little anonymity for the reader's sake so that they can imagine the characters from their point of view. You want to invite your reader in and use their imagination. When we only give 3 bits of description, whether it's a chair or a mug, whatever it is, an old guitar that you're going to describe, invite them to use their own imagination to complete that item, because you've only given them 3 bits to go on. Now, I love this video I'm about to show you. You see that? Love. That's how excited I am about it. In this video, I want you to be listening. It's called The Stephen King on Childhood. All right. You're going to be listening for him to say this. The things that really scare us are the things that are going on just outside the spotlight that you can't quite see. Might have to I'm gonna have to do a stop share. Put us into that video as we wait for it to come up. It's coming. Look at what the ad is. It's TCC. How cool is that? That's pretty cool. Nifty.
We all know that communication is not a one-way street. It's a conversation. Which is why we built Grammarly Business, to take the goodness of Grammarly and bring it to organizations. We do that with features that our customers use to collaborate today. We are also launching Knowledge Share, a new feature that allows you to surface organizational knowledge wherever your teams are working. Let me show you how these new features will improve team productivity and your flow of work with a demo. Nava, our product manager, got approval on the project proposal and is now working to launch Project Alpha. She notices that Grammarly suggests that she add a new knowledge share term. By saving this term with the definition, related materials, and key context, Nava can keep the whole organization aligned on Project Alpha. Previously, teams would have to look for terms and acronyms, documents, key contexts in multiple applications. It's hard to keep up. Knowledge Share helps everyone stay on the same page without having to context switch. And as you saw in the demo, later this summer, Knowledge Share will connect to external systems such as Google Drive and Confluence.
Go Grammarly.
I was taking a walk one day, and I happened to spot a little girl on the corner of my street. She was about 5 years old. She was sitting in the dirt at the edge of the road, talking to herself or to invisible friends and drawing in the dirt with a stick. And I thought, you know, if I did that, somebody would come along and say, there's a grown man sitting in the dirt, talking to himself, to people who aren't there, and drawing with a stick, which is very close to what I do for a living,
yes.
What people pay me to do. So the two things that I discovered and the two things that interest me about childhood, the first thing is that it's a secret world that exists by its own rules and lives in its own culture. And the second thing is that we forget what it is to be a child, and we forget that life, which is kind of exotic and strange, and that's what really interests me.
Did you have a highly developed sense of evil yourself as a child, or were you obsessed by the nature of evil? Or
I'm always more interested in the question itself than I am in the answer. Why do people ask me about my childhood? Hey, this is what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But I don't remember having a particularly unusual childhood. And it seems to me that the focus of that question is always something terrible must have happened to you when you were a kid, Steve, or you wouldn't be writing this awful stuff that you're writing. But I think that that question grows out of a basic misconception about why we remember so little. I think a lot of people make the assumption that we block memories that are terrible, when I think what really happens is this, that we think in a different way as children. We tend to think around corners instead of in straight lines. Sometimes for a kid, the shortest distance between 2 points is not a straight line. And that's the way that we think and dream. And I think that as children we tend to live in this kind of dream state, and we've forgotten it in the same way. And because I equate that sort of dream state with a heightened sort of mental state, I make this easy cross-connection between childhood and strange powers, paranormal powers, or whatever. And it's been successful as a fictional device.
Could you talk about your sense of the origin of fear?
I think that a lot of what we think of as horror fiction or fiction in the macabre comes out of this sense of futurity that we have. As we grow older, we become aware of the fact that we are going to die, and most of us are going to die in ways that are unpleasant. For most of us, it's there, it's waiting for us. We understand that on an intellectual level, but I don't think on an emotional level or a spiritual level we ever quite come to terms with it. Mentally, we grasp it. Emotionally, we can't quite grasp it. When we deal with stories of the supernatural, whatever the supernatural element is, the mind sort of bifurcates, and the story begins to talk to us on two levels. And on the intellectual level, you grasp the fact that it is make-believe, but the subconscious grabs the story in a symbolic way, whether we like to or not. I'm not much when it comes to actual literal symbolism in stories, but I do realize that you're dealing here with things that substitute for other things, the way that in dreams, if you're dreaming about riding in a car and you're out of control, you're really dreaming about something else that has to do with your waking life. And the sensor changes it just enough for it to be acceptable to the front of the brain. And I think that in a lot of supernatural stories, we're dealing with fears that exist on a very practical level. And in between those two levels, the shout on top, where the make-believe is going on, and the whisper underneath, where the subconscious mind is saying, yes, but this could really happen if you just changed a few things.
Yes.
That's where the story can succeed. When we deal with the grand guignol, the things that really scare us are the things that are going on just outside the spotlight that you can't quite see.
Listen, we've run out of time. Thank you, Stephen King. May your muse visit you often up in Maine, and may you continue to frighten and wow us and entertain us and inspire us. Frighten us to life, not to death.
Thank you, Tom. May your muse continue to visit you as well.
Okay, this is Tom Smith saying so long.
Right, very good. Love that video. Absolutely love that video. Let's go back into the PowerPoint. All right. The things that really scare us are the things that are going on just outside the spotlight that you can't quite see. Isn't that nice? How do you know what your reader needs described? Things that are outside the spotlight. Spook them out a little bit. But I love also that he was talking about in there is that he likes to write like a child thinks, because a child can think around corners. Whereas when we get older, we tend to think in just straight lines. It's easier for a child to think outside the box than it is for an adult. And I think that's amazing. I mean, what happens to us as we grow up, right? So this idea, though, of the spotlight, what does the reader need to feel, hear, see, smell, and taste in order to be with you, to go where you want them to go? That's where we want to go with our writing if we're going to be descriptive and invite them inside. So I love to do this activity. Obviously, since we're an online class, it's not going to be as efficient. But I like to tell the students, you are the realtor, right? And your task is to convince me, your audience, to buy a house from you sight unseen. So you're going to pretend like I've never seen this house that I'm about to show you. And you have to sell it to me over the phone or in an email. You want me to come and see it really bad. Use the senses. Use specific details, not abstract ideas. Know your audience. Your audience is me. So think outside the spotlight. Think around corners like a child. So then I love to pop this picture up and sit back and wait to see what students are going to be willing to say. If I'm the person that you want to come look at this house to purchase it, what would you say to me in description of this house? Oh, this is always a fun activity. Oh, I wish we were in the room together so we could do this as a group. What would you say to get me to want to come and buy this house? We need to be thinking that way about our audience. What does our audience need to be interested? A modifier chart's a great idea when you're working with adjectives. Got a picture of something that you want to describe, come up with some sight words, some sound words, some taste words, some touch words, some smell words, and then handpick which ones are the good ones. Use adjectives. Some more descriptive word collecting. And so again, if we were in the room together, I would ask you to describe to me how this would taste. Well, I bought one. And I actually bought it for a Comp 1 class. I was going to take it to class and have one of the students describe what he thought it was going to taste like, and then I was going to have him taste it and then describe to us what it does taste like. But my daughter talked me into trying it at home. Little did I know that she was ready to take a picture of me as soon as I tasted it, and here is the result. Let's just say it was disgusting, foul, repellent, pungent, gross, awful. There's so many words to describe it. Wrong, nasty. Here's another picture. Think about, what do you smell? What do you hear? What do you see? What do you feel? What about this one? What do you hear? Smell. You taste. What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you feel? What do you touch? How do you feel? What do you hear? See? Smell. Describe these things. Look at it. Think about it. Describe it. Ah, the spotlight. What does the reader need to feel, hear, see, smell, and taste in order to be with you? To go where you want them to go. Go there with your writing and your description. If the chair needs described, describe it. Aren't these super great? These are awesome. Like, if you had to pick one of these chairs, which one would you sit in? If these were all in a room, which one would I run and go sit in? I think honestly I would run and go sit on an and sign. Because that's just funny. I would go sit on the and. That's the one I'm most drawn to. I really like that a lot. If it needs describe it. Now we're going to briefly talk about using examples or telling stories. Like a preacher with an illustration or a politician who tells stories. We need to get good at telling stories, because telling stories is how people understand concepts and ideas. And you know what I'm talking about. When a teacher uses a good story to back up an idea, we understand it better. That's why I tell so many stories, is because it's this tool this strategy for argument called using examples. It's a wonderful tool, and it's one that we all need to get good at. We need to make sure that our examples are relevant and that they're on topic. We need to make sure that they are unambiguous, meaning that they are clear examples with concrete and specific details. We want to use specific examples of general terms. So give some definitions, explain things, give examples, tell stories about definitions to help people understand what you're saying. And examples should always be in emphatic order, meaning they're in whatever order you need them to be in to make sense of your argument. So generally we start with the weakest and we work our way to the strongest, and then we gut punch at the end, just like the preacher who wants to tell that really strong story at the end so everybody comes forward to make a decision. That's intentional. It is intentional. Politicians do it, speakers do it. It's intentional. Writers do it. Kids that know how to get all the cookies out of the cookie jar do it. Put your examples in the right order. Weakest to strongest, so that you can gut punch at the end. Draw that emotion out of your audience. Make a point, tell a story. Here's an article that I found by Henry O. Miller. Make a point, tell a story, speaking for all occasions. I'm going to share some of the information from this article that I found to be very insightful. The 6 emotions to which all humans relate are happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, and disgust. Show your emotions as you make your point. Tell your stories using the 6 emotions, and they will help your audience remember what they see in their minds. In the world of public speaking, telling a story to make a point or making a point by telling a story is a well-known secret that has helped many speakers with their development. However, how you tell that story will often determine if your audience gets the point. The story you choose to tell must have left a significant impression on you when you first heard it. Perhaps it made you angry, sad, surprised, happy, or even disgusted. You may have also learned a very important life lesson from that story. Whatever it was that made you choose that particular story to make it worth repeating, to make your point, has to be rediscovered if you want that story to have a similar effect on your audience. So you need to portray those emotions that you initially felt with why you've chosen this story in the first place. You may have heard that story 3 days, 3 months, or even 3 years ago. However long ago you hear the story, it must have left a profound impression on your life. The challenge is for you to share what you learned with your audience. If you can get your audience to want to take some significant action at the end of your talk, speech, or presentation, then you and your story have made your point. So what's your story? As you tell your story, try to focus on giving your audience that same experience that you had when you first heard your story. As you tell that story, try to transport your audience to that time and place when you had your experience. Take your audience with you to relive the experience. Take them on that emotional journey you had with word pictures as only you recall. Our lives are the sum total of the stories and experiences we have lived, relived, told, and retold. Only with writing, we're just putting it on paper. When we make a point by telling our stories or tell our stories to make a point, we are sharing some of the most intimate and unforgettable experiences that we have heard, seen, and felt in our lifetime. By sharing those experiences, you are letting your audiences know who or what we truly are not, only as a speaker, but also as a person. That was a wonderful article. We tell stories. We tell stories that were important to us so that we can express that same emotion for our readers to feel. Communicate your point of view through storytelling. This was written by Divya Parekh. Divya covers mindful influence, business relationships, and team and leadership performance. Forbes magazine. I really get great articles from Forbes. Just do. But think back to any lectures or presentations you heard or articles you read when you were in the process of learning something new. What sticks in your mind? Bullet points of facts that supported the argument of what you were reading? Or was it the continuous narrative of someone speaking as they went through a dry rendition of their information? My guess is any examples like these were immediately forgettable. Since people began to communicate, stories have been used to get the point or idea across to an audience. Stories make words come alive. They explain examples or point of view in a way that resonates with an audience. Listeners connect with stories emotionally, associating their feelings with their learning. Before there was mass communication, by which I mean the printing press, people used stories to pass individual lessons down from one generation to another. Cave paintings in France or those used by cliff dwellers in Arizona present a specific narrative to those who came after the ones who composed the drawings. Before history books, people relied on oral history to make sure succeeding generations knew who their ancestors were and what they did to get to their current place in time. Epic poems like Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey were oral stories explaining pieces of Greek history and other concepts. A good story is something a person can relate to, thus making understanding of what the story is about easy to grasp. One of the most potent storytellers of all time, based on the Christian Bible, was Jesus Christ. I perceive his teachings from a secular viewpoint, so this is not a treatise on faith. He used parables to get people to understand a very different point of view that he was espousing than what they knew. His parables were stories using common elements that people 2,000 years ago understood. The stories he told revolved around the familiar, typical industries of the day like fishing, farming, and vineyards. He used everyday events like weddings, commerce, and elements of nature to relate his ideas to people. Most of the parables were short and to the point. The masses understood and connected to his message. You can use a similar structure today to make yourself, your company, and anything you wish relate to others known. Let's face it, most people like listening to a good story. Furthermore, the various ways of putting a story out to others are many and go from low tech to high. Think about all the ways you can get your account out there. You can speak to others, write a book, produce an online video, have a website, or stand in front of thousands of people or more at a time. You can tweet, post, text, share, and use every other method we have today on social media. You can get your story out there. However, it works best if you think it through. Some people share stories with an audience intuitively. As a result, those listening, watching, or reading get the point quickly. The truth is that the ability doesn't happen naturally for most of us. With mindful preparation and practice, being able to share stories will have an impact, or that have an impact will become more natural. I tell a lot of stories. A lot. It's easier for me in a group setting than it is in a one-on-one setting, which is pretty wild, but that's just one of the functions of my brain. I do better when I'm standing in front of 20 or 1,000 people than I am one-on-one. As far as telling stories, it's funny to me. First, know what you want your story to be about. The fundamental question to ask yourself is, what do I want my audience to learn from my story? I use story in the singular here because each of your stories should have a unique point. When you can answer this question to your satisfaction, it will help you construct your narrative succinctly. Some people have a problem coming up with the actual story. They're not sure about using their personal experiences to tell a story. That's okay. Use someone else's account. If you relate the story in general terms, you can use something you read, saw, heard, and then share it with your audience. If it's a particular story that someone else related, then give that person recognition. There's no plagiarism here. However, you have almost infinite resources to find a story that can communicate what you want. And that's why that relates back to find a way to care about whatever it is that you have to write about. Look for stories about it. Now, here they're saying, maybe you're not comfortable sharing of your own experiences, and that's understandable, it's fine. But if you do share of your own experiences, you have access to much more greater emotion. And telling a story with greater emotion makes a bigger impact on your audience. Keep your story consistent across all media. whether it is a speech, a website blog, or an online article. Make sure all the different versions are very similar. You may share your story in a 20-chapter book and tweet a few book excerpts in a 280-character increment. Those are two communication vehicles at different ends of the spectrum, but your message needs to be consistent in both. You want your audience to remember your ideas and thoughts. I use stories throughout my last couple of books to get my point across to my readers. While some of the readers may forget the points I laid out in a summary of a chapter, they do remember the conversation between a few characters in my book that illustrate the same principles. I am careful to speak the same about the concepts I feel that are essential, whether I'm on stage in front of a broad audience or giving a talk to one client. So we think about this in our own lives, like we remember more about the stories that people tell than we do the actual point they're trying to make. Is that crazy? But we need the stories to help us make the point. If you can bring a person into your thought processes through a story, you are going to have a consistent follower. Be genuine and take turns making your audience cry, laugh, or think. When trying to improve our career, we often talk about engaging with others. Nothing engages as much as a story that will fire up your audience's imagination so they understand who you are and why they want to continue to follow you. Oh, God. Before you know it, you have set yourself up as an influencer with your community behind you. I just scared myself to death. The drawer on my desk just kind of comes out on its own. And it felt like a hand reached up from underneath my desk and grabbed my side, but it was the drawer. Oh, we just lost everything we just read, didn't we? Okay, moving on. All right, so an example essay with examples or stories throughout. I like to talk about this in the classroom. If I were to write an example essay, this would be a great topic. The thesis. Spending Christmas on a Florida beach is an absolute must vacation for any moderate income family because the weather is mild, the beaches are empty, and the cost is affordable beyond belief. So there's my opinion and my 3 main points. Boom, thesis statement. Number 1, the weather. It's mild. We did this several times with our children over the years. Everybody picked up. We went down to Florida. We stayed in Daytona Beach a couple of times, and then in Panama City Beach another time over the Christmas holiday. That way you don't have to decide which in-laws to go spend the holiday with. But number 1, the weather is mild. The temperatures were 70s and 80s the whole time we were there. Never really getting above 82, 83 during the daytime. Like beautiful, beautiful weather. Perfect weather for being out on the beach. Loved it. Number 2, the beaches are empty. There's less people. One Christmas we were there, we stayed in Daytona Beach Shores. I will never forget. We spent the entire day on the beach. We were in a condo. We were staying in Peck Plaza, which is the round condo on Daytona Beach Shores. And it's like 20 stories tall. We were staying on the 18th floor, and we had a condo that slept 8 or 10 people, fully stocked, furnished. It's wonderful. But on Christmas Day, we were there for days, but on Christmas Day specifically, the beach was empty, except for us. And my kids got to run and play the entire day. What a special Christmas. We played on the beach and we had an absolute ball. It was wonderful. There's just fewer people. And then the other days, there's no lines. You can let your kids wander the beach and you can still keep an eye on them without having to worry. It's just an amazing thing. Like all the tourist trap areas you can go to, and there's not lines. There's not people that you're bumping into constantly. You're not having to wait to eat food. It's an amazing time to be there. And number 3, it's cheaper. Oh my gosh, is it cheaper? So we were there at Peck Plaza, we were there for 8 nights, 9 days, 8 nights. And I'm just gonna tell you, I'm looking this up here. I want to see how much it costs now. Let's look at booking.com, or do we want Vrbo? Let's go to Vrbo. Let's put some dates in. Let's do 23rd to the 29th next week. Let's see if there's anything available. I bet there's not. That is not Peck Plaza. All right. Okay, here's one that's Peck Plaza. This one only sleeps 6. $260 a night. $260 a night for Peck Plaza now. All right. So that's the dates for next week. Now let's put in different dates. Let's put in the week of Christmas. See if it'll go that far out. I know what I paid and I'm going to tell you, but I'm just pulling this up. Oh, there's Peck Plaza. So many. Wow, it's more expensive than when I went. Let's put in my actual dates. Well, this might not be a good. Okay. Well, anyway, I found a good deal. I must not have used Vrbo. We stayed there 8 nights, 9 days on the beach, straight on the beach for $800. It was incredible. And I just showed you it's $265 to $300 a night for most of the condos in that condominium in the summer. So much cheaper at Christmas time. So anyway, that is how you do that. You tell a story for each one. And then I didn't really tell a story for number 2, but there's definitely stories. We went to an oyster bar, Mike's Oyster Bar, but I think that one was in Panama City Beach, but we went on Christmas Eve and there was no line, total tourist trap restaurant, no line. We went right in, had our food, left, went about our business. It was fan-stinking-tastic. So, and my kid, Katie, was eating oysters like they were soup. Mom, you want? No. No, but we had a ball. Now, I have something I want to share with you. We're drawing very close to the end here. But years ago, when I was giving example essay assignments, we used to write example essays in class. And so we give the students a topic, and they would have to write an example essay, an example of that topic. And this one that I'm going to share with you was written by a man named Raymond, and the title of it is 14 and Shot. Okay, so he's writing an example of something that happened to him as a child that scared him, right? So what follows is a rough draft. This is what Raymond turned in, and I was very pleased. Keep in mind, this was at Vatterott. This was many years ago, and this is a 50-some-year-old man who's going back to school to change his life, who didn't complete high school. So his grasp of grammar and whatnot is limited. So please keep that in mind as we read this. But his essay touched me deeply. So I want to share it with you. 14 and being shot. Free writing rough draft. Dark, chilled night, filled with slurring chatter as I walk down the piss and alcohol smelling street, stepping on crunchy broken beer bottles. The houses are somewhat livable, most were raggedy and abandoned. It was a school night, so I had to hurry to get to Chinese food place before they closed, and more than that, curfew. Even though the neighborhood was full of some of the toughest thought gangbangers, I lived in the neighborhood my whole life, so I was not scared. Furthermore, I was just a nerdy schoolboy who loved to go to my spirit-filled church and serve as the usher. People shouldn't shoot at people that don't have anything to do with what's going on. Nevertheless, I was walking down this alley of a street called Mary, and behold, there were two grimy-looking thugs asking me what's up. Nothing, I said, trying not to stare, but noticeably seeing these brutal-looking rifles they're carrying. My heart started to bounce like a basketball, but I gracefully walked almost in run mode, thinking to myself, Mama, please pray for your child and let me make it back home. Not never thinking I'll be faced with trouble like these. All I know is school and church. Breathing like I ran a mile, made it to the food place not too far from where I was at. Saw a friend from school who I knew, told him what was going on. He chuckled as if it were a game. Where are they? He asked. Just as I pointed toward the vacant lot filled with tall, dense grass, I heard a loud bang. My eyes closed shut, seeing nothing but total blackness. Moments later, I looked up to see my friend on the ground scattering, trying to get away. Looked toward the lot. The goons are steady approaching as I try to run. My leg feels like dead weight, so I could not move. A voice came into my head, lay down. I laid my head down and prayed as I watched the bright fire come from the end of the rifle 6 feet away. As the thumping stopped, all I can see is dust and smell gunpowder. Look at the wall behind me, no holes in the wall. 14 and was shot. 1 entry, 2 exit, broken hip. Never would have thought it would happen to me. Wrong person, wannabe. Stop trying to be gangster because you really are stupid. That's a beautiful piece. Raymond really opened up and wrote from his heart. And, I loved it. I loved everything about this piece. I did help him edit it up, but I wanted to keep the rough draft. It's so raw. And that's what your rough draft should be. It should be raw. Right from inside here. Pour it out, let it out. Even if the words don't all make sense in the rough draft, that's okay. Because you're going to write it, you're going to let it all out, and then you're going to put it away for a while. You're going to put it away for a day, 2 days, 3 days before you get it back out. But when we're telling stories, we need to be real and honest. It's good stuff. Thank you to Raymond. So description, feeling, yes, it's there. The point of the essay, he's telling kids to stop trying to be gangsters. He's telling this to kids in the class that he was in. I had a range of ages in that classroom, and there were some really young guys just right off the street, still running the streets. And Raymond's worried about them, and so he wrote this piece and wanted to share it in class too. And it was touching, and it was an experience. I do want to put it that way. So all of this has been so much information today, I know, but suffice it to say, we need to bleed on the page, we need to use Grammarly, and we need to try to do our best. But we also have to understand that haters are going to hate. We need to care less, and we need to harden the fish up, Care Bear, right? So if we get all of this down into our spirits, into our thoughts, into our minds, get rid of what you knew before and focus on what we're doing now before we start to write. Get yourself in a good zone, because here it comes. We're writing now. Essay 1. Give you a brief description of this, and then I'm going to jump off of here for today. This is a narrative essay. Think of a time in your life when you experience a strong emotion due to a specific occurrence or situation. This is cause and effect. It's also an example essay. This could be positive or negative. That's up to you. I used to have students only write about negative occurrences because it's easier to access negative language than it is to access positive language. But that's up to you. Some people just really, really don't want to dig into the negative things that have happened to them. So think of a time when you have experienced a strong emotion, negative or positive. It is up to you. Whatever you feel comfortable digging into, close off all distractions and word vomit. Bleed on the page. Cut yourself open. Let the words roll out. Put yourself back into the situation and write out everything that you remember. Tell your story. Use all 5 senses. Be descriptive. Go for it. You cannot hurt my feelings or shock me. because I know all of our lives are wild. Let this be therapeutic for you. I've had students write from making the last goal at a soccer game of his senior year and winning the game and what that felt like. Yeah, I've had a student write about that. I've had a student write about being sexually molested by her father. So it's up to you what you choose to dig into. The process here, the reason for this assignment is to access our emotions and to write with our senses. So tell your story, use all 5 senses, be descriptive, go for it. You can't hurt my feelings or shock me. Let this be therapeutic for you. When this assignment was for me, after encouragement from my professor, it became the first thing I ever had published, and that is a short story called The Echo of Alone. It was about a childhood nightmare that I had. It was a recurring nightmare. I will never forget, I turned that in and he said, you should get this published in a horror magazine. And I was like, me, I'm a mama 6. What are you talking about? I'm a stay-at-home mama 6. I mean, I was working at that time, but I was a stay-at-home mom for 12 years. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? But I did. I submitted it and it ended up getting published. And that was the beginning for me. Let yourself go. Bleed on the page. Only make sure to edit it when you're done. And don't edit it right away. Write it, put it away. Give yourself a day or two to breathe before you get it back out to edit it. Get your MLA format correct, run Grammarly, and upload it to Blackboard. Now, I don't know when you're going to be viewing this, so those dates down there at the bottom may or may not be accurate for your class. Always look at your black bell, your Blackboard course shell, for the appropriate dates for doing your appropriate due dates for assignments, right? So let's jump out of PowerPoint. So I'm so excited to have brought you all of that wonderful information. These are some of my favorite things to talk about. I can talk about writing all day, every day. I get really super excited about it. And I absolutely love that article from Chuck Wendig. And I enjoy all the points that Stephen King shares. They're very basic points. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate what writing entails in our heads. And really, for Stephen King, he says the most important thing you need is your vocabulary. And stop trying to be fancier than you are. Use the words that you have. If you want to add to the words that you have, do some reading. It doesn't have to be novels. You don't have to sit down and read Shakespeare. You don't have to sit down and read Charles Dickens, things that are hard to understand. Oh my goodness, pick up a magazine and read some articles. Read some news. I don't know. Get on Reddit and read some short stories that are written by people in your age group. Read. Find something interesting. Dig into it. That's how we increase our vocabulary. And as we increase our vocabulary, we increase our writing skills. And bada boom, bada bing, before you know it, you're a writer. You're a communicator. And it's a win for all of us. So with that, I am going to stop this presentation and I'm going to say, text me if you have any questions. You know what number that is. It's on the syllabus. So I'm going to let you go. Have a super awesome, wonderful day. And I will talk at you soon.